from more important to less important. That is in a descending order. You start with the most important task that you do first, moving down to what is less important. Haydar, your question, yes. I will answer your question after we do this task, okay? Just keep your question and I will remember to answer it for sure. But let's first focus on this task, and then after we are done with the task, I will answer this question of yours. Mona, yes, please go ahead.
Yes, doctor.
Go ahead, please. Yeah, which one would be the first to do?
Yes, doctor, I think the first specification of real-world learning goals. Since we focus on communicative as we teach in communicative approaches.
Yes, good. What about
the second? Can we say specification of performance objectives, since there is a relationship between goals and performance objective, how to achieve our goals in communication.
Very good, yes. What else?
As well as specification of learning tasks and activities. Since we focus on task-based syllabuses.
Yes. Anything else or just these three?
But doctor, also we need needs analysis in order to design our syllabus.
Very good. Yeah, for sure. And don't you think that we need to start with needs analysis? The first thing, the most important thing to consider would be conducting needs analysis, right?
Yes, doctor. Follow our learners' needs.
Exactly, because if we don't know what our learners' needs are, how can we specify some real learning goals for them, or how can we specify some performance objectives to make sure that you're addressing those needs? So first of all, we need to conduct needs analysis. Very good. But from the two kinds of needs analysis we learned about in the previous chapter, which one is more relevant here? Do you remember the two different kinds of needs analysis we discussed earlier in the previous chapter? What were they?
We have learner analysis and task analysis.
Excellent. So which one would be more relevant to?
Of course, doctor, task-based task analysis. Since we deal with task-based syllabus.
That's right. Thank you so much. Very good. In learner analysis, we are more concerned with information about the learner, what our learners already knows, what our learners really want to know, and some information that can help us decide what to put into our syllabus and what to discard. But task analysis tells us about what tasks our students need most for the purposes they want to make use of the language later on in their lives. So from the two types of needs analysis, we need to conduct task analysis to understand what tasks and activities would be more suitable for this course to include in our syllabus. Thank you so much. Exactly. And so, Maya, yes, needs analysis is absolutely vital because you need to design your course or syllabus according to your learner's needs. So it needs to be done first of all. Before anything else, you need to conduct needs analysis, and of the two types, task analysis more specifically, to help us decide what our learners' needs are with regard to the task. After that, you will specify the real-world learning goals, because goals are a general picture of the course, what you want your students to achieve, and which are closely related to your learners' needs. And since goals and objectives are also interrelated, objectives are some ways through which you can achieve the goals of the course. So after specifying the goals of the course, you need to specify those routes, those ways which we call objectives, And finally, you need to specify some learning tasks and activities for the students to engage in to learn the language. So these are the most important planning tasks that the syllabus designer requires to specify when they want to design a task-based or procedural syllabus. Why specification of linguistic content and specification of topics and themes don't seem to be relevant here? Do you know why?
Yes, doctor. I think they are related to product-oriented syllabuses.
Yes, sure. Look, the name speaks for themselves. In linguistic content was specifying linguistic content to teach was the main feature of the grammatical syllabus or the product-oriented syllabuses. If you chose lexical items, it became lexical syllabus. If you chose the grammatical items to teach, it became grammatical syllabus. If you chose, some topics and or functions and notions to teach, it became notional functional. All of these are linguistic content that are specified. So they are features of a product-oriented syllabus, not a process-oriented one. And topics and themes are also features that we specify in a topical, theme-based, or what we call situational syllabus. And all these three types of syllabuses are categorized under the product-oriented syllabuses. So that's why these are not relevant to a task-based syllabus or a procedural syllabus. Very good. Okay, now back to your question. Hey, Dad. He asked the question, can we make syllabus mixed of all the grammatical, vocabulary, notional, etc.? What do you think? What is your answer to your friend's question? Is it possible to use a combination of all of the syllabuses, grammatical syllabus, lexical syllabus, functional, notional? Yes or no? Yes, I know. I'm asking your friends to see what they think about the question. Hey, Dad. Yeah. Can we use, what do you think? Have you ever heard of an eclectic or integrated syllabus? Integrated syllabus is a kind of syllabus in which all the uh, points of strength of the previous syllabuses are taken and are included in the syllabus. It means that we use the points of strength of a number of different syllabuses, like the grammatical syllabus, how best grammar can be taught according to the modern theories of language learning and language teaching, how best vocabulary can be taught, how best you can teach pronunciation, how best you can involve tasks in your uh, syllabus. So it means that it's possible to have a combination of all different types of syllabuses, as is the case with many of the commercial books available these days. I don't know how much you in your schools or your institutions, language schools or language institutions in Iraq, make use of such textbooks like Four Corners, American Files, Interchange Series, Top Notch, Touchstone. So have you heard of these books, or do you use them in the teaching of English there, over there in Iraq? The ones that I mentioned are the names of the book series that are used to teach English to students in different parts of the world. The interchange series are the most, the oldest ones. After that, we have the top notch series, which are the most advanced forms of the interchange series. We have Four Corners, we have American Files, we have Family and Friends for lower intermediate learners or children. We have Touchstone, we have American Files, you name it. There are a lot of such books in commercial textbooks which are taught at different institutions in Iran. Have you heard these names before? Any of them? Or do you use any of these books I just mentioned in Iran? No, you don't. Okay. So what sort of books then you use to teach English to your students there? So if I can find a math table of content of one of these books, I'm going to share it with you to show how an integrated syllabus or a combination of several different types of syllabuses are used to teach English to foreign language learners. You use English for Iraq. These books are published and produced in Iraq by Iraqi teachers or book writers. Okay, I see. I see. That's interesting because I have seen the books I just mentioned are also used in our neighboring country, Turkey. I have visited some of their institutions and some of their language schools, and I've seen that they're using almost the same books that we use to teach English in Iran. Yes, that's right, Haydar. Uh, Not just because you're choosing more than one different passages. Content can one single book can focus attention to a number of different uh, areas of the language, and therefore it takes it actually has a kind of integrated or eclectic syllabus. Yeah, I see the point, Samaya. You have some editorial committee, they sit down and write your own books for teaching English there. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Because as I mentioned before, since so far as I know, a lot of our neighboring countries are using the books that we use in Iran for the purpose of teaching English. Okay, so just remind me, and I will send you an example of an eclectic or what we call integrated syllabus. I will send you a table of content or the map of the book. In that picture, I will show you how several different syllabuses are used, not just one. Okay, but whenever you use an integrated syllabus, there's always one syllabus that is dominant, one syllabus that determines the rest. For instance, you need to choose one dominant syllabus, and according to that dominant syllabus, relate all the other syllabuses to it. Mostly, the dominant syllabus is situational or topical. You choose the situation, and for that situation, you choose some functions and notions which are related to this situation. Say, at the restaurant, what functions the students can um, learn about so that if they need to communicate with some people in this particular situation. They know what to say and how to say it. And some grammatical functions related, some
Tuition.
grammatical items related to these functions are specified, and some lexical items related to the functions are also separated and taught. Cultural aspects are also discussed. So you see that there's one dominant syllabus, but the rest of the syllabuses are related to this dominant syllabus. So English for Iraq is concerned about dialogues, conversations, and vocabulary. I see. Just one book for teaching all through the country, for all the language schools or institutions that deal with English language teaching. It's unbelievable because here, in every small city, uh, here in Babelsar, if you have visited Babelsar, I don't know. This is a very small city that has only around 150,000 people. I see. But in this very small city in Babelsar, students send their kids to learn English. And in each of these schools or each of these language institutions, they use a separate series of books. Some of them use the Interchange series, some of them use the Top Notch series, some of them use the Touchstone series, some of them use the Four Corners series. So you see, it's quite varied, and that's why it's so unbelievable for me that just one series of books for all the stages, is used to teach English. Um, maybe that's the reason why, I'm sorry to say, your proficiency in English is not as good as Iranian students. Maybe it's because of the books that we use. These books are original. They are written by famous scholars who are, prolific writers like Jack C. Richards, and a lot of famous people write these books for language learners, and students here learn a lot of expressions, a lot of vocabulary and grammatical features that. Uh, okay, great. Let's now. Yeah, I understand that. I see the point now. I was wondering. Oh, I was always wondering why. Why is it that uh, most of the Iraqi students are like this? When you are you take usually the ones who continue their education at the master's level are the cream of the crop. It means that you're much better than the rest of the students. So I can imagine how your students at the bachelor's level, BA level, might suffer from lack of knowledge in English. Okay, good. And in this, I talked about Bangalore project by Prabhu. That he understood that if he designed some tasks and activities in which students focus their conscious attention on meaning, then their subconscious attention will definitely grasp the grammatical structures of the language, and they will develop their grammatical competence this way. So let us now move on to. So we are done with. No, there's one more thing about the procedural syllabus that we need to know. In this kind of project or Bangalore project, which he later called procedural syllabus, three types of tasks were used mostly. The first one is information gap, task or activity. The second one is reasoning gap, activity or task. And the third one is opinion gap activity. So can you explain very briefly what each of these types of activities are, and give me an example for each of them, if possible? Nothing? No ideas about these types of activities? What is an information gap activity? Go ahead, Wahida. That is one of the problems. Yes, of course.
You are now muted.
Okay, so let's start with the information gap activity. The name speaks for itself. Information gap. It means that there is a gap in information that needs to be filled out by the participants in this activity. Usually, in information gap activity, the case is that one student has some information while the other student or the other students in the group lack that information. And because of this gap, they need to communicate with each other in a meaningful way to fill that gap. So one student has a piece of information, the other one doesn't. So they talk to each other, and the one who does not have information seeks to get this information from the other interlocutor. And this way, the communication becomes meaningful. Like, imagine you pair up two students, give one student information about a movie that is going to be played at a certain cinema at a certain time. The second student has no idea about the timing, about the name of the cinema, about what movie they're going to show. And you ask them, you give them a task, you say that, okay, you plan to go and watch a movie together, and there is this movie that is going to be shown in this movie center, movie theater, so in order to make a decision about the timing, when would be the best time for you to go, you and your partner have to share some information with each other. So you ask the person who doesn't have any idea to ask some questions about the timing, about the name of the movie, about the theater that shows it. And then after he gets the information, now they can plan to go and watch this movie at a time that suits both of them best. You see it? This is an information gap activity. The second one is a reasoning gap activity. Again, if you take a close look at the title, the name, it speaks for itself. It means that there is some reasoning involved in this activity. Students are given a situation, and for this situation, they need to choose and decide on the best option possible. A very famous example of a reasoning gap activity is one task, which is named the hot air balloon task, designed by Skihan to show how planning or for a task is really important. And in this balloon task, this is a hot air balloon that has several passengers. They are traveling, and all of a sudden they come across a problem. There's something wrong with this hot air balloon. At any moment, it might crash. So they decide to first of all, they throw away any heavy items that they are carrying, including some sacks that are hanging from the side of this hot air balloon. But they see that it's not sufficing, and they need to decide to throw one of the passengers out. And from among the passengers, there are a number of people. One is a pregnant woman, the other one is a young child of 4, the third one is for instance, the president of the country, the last one is a very old man of 80 years of age. So you ask the students, which one would you choose to be thrown out of the hot air balloon? And give us the reasons for that. So students need to reason and they need to use their logic and logical reasoning to decide which option would be the best and why. So this is a reasoning gap activity, and students need to prove themselves, justify their answers by some facts and knowledge they have about the situation. Uh, and the last type of activity, which is opinion gap, as the name speaks for itself again, students need to answer the question based on their personal opinion, their personal experiences. So one student's answer might be very different from the other student's answer because it is their personal opinion and there is no correct or right or wrong answer for such a thing. So you might ask them, for instance, to imagine themselves in a situation and say that what to describe a situation where something has happened to the narrator, and then you ask them to put themselves in the shoes of this narrator and say what would they have done if they were in his shoes. So here they mostly answer based on their personal opinion. They're based on their personal experiences and their their outlook towards the world. Yes, hey Dad.
You are now unmuted.
Do you have a question or you want to? Okay, yes, hey Dad. Thank you so much. You see,
You are now
this
muted.
kind of activity that you're talking about, we can call it information gap because you're working on a project, and in this project you need to collect some information. So this is quite natural that some of you have some information because you're teachers, you're teaching, have access to a teaching situation, while other students don't, and therefore they don't have anything to share with you, and they rely on your information to complete this task. In a sense, it could be a kind of information gap, but this kind of activity is mostly used for teaching purposes. You want to engage students in some certain activities and tasks so that through engaging in the task, they learn a lot uh, about an issue. And in the project that you're doing, I see that the same purpose is also there. My first purpose of asking you to conduct this project is to be able to see things quite clearly for yourself by doing it practically, and not just sticking to the theories that we encounter in the books. We want to understand it quite well to be able to use it in our teaching. So since my purpose of this project is kind of has some pedagogic nature, where I want you to learn, take away something from this project, yes, of course, this would be an information gap activity in this regard.
You are now
Thank you.
unmuted.
Good. Thank you.
You are now muted.
Yes, so hey Dad, you have written here something. The purpose of this study was to investigate the effect of opinion gap tasks on the speaking ability of Iranian intermediate EFL learners. Is it the title of a study you have searched for and you have found? And if you could please, if you have read this article, could you please say what sort of opinion gap activities are used in the study? Any ideas? If they are mentioned, of course, in the article. All right. So if the three types of activities are clear enough, because if as teachers you learn to use these types of activities in your own English classes, I suppose you're gonna do a great favor to your students. You know why? Because especially the last two types of activities can help your students develop their critical thinking abilities, which is one of the skills that we need most in today's world. In 21st century, one of the skills that we need to survive would be to be able to think critically, to make the right decisions, to be able to criticize and, analyze and evaluate whatever we see, we hear, we read. So to make up our mind and to make decisions, we need to develop this ability and skill in ourselves. So if you use reasoning gap and opinion gap activities a lot in your teaching, you're helping your students to develop their critical thinking skills and abilities a great deal. All right. So if you don't have any questions about these three types of activities, let me share a new file with you. It's about task-based. Now we are going to move on to task-based syllabus. Yes, task-based syllabuses, starting with, the point of departure, as you all know, in the task-based syllabus, just like the procedural syllabus, is the selection of tasks, which is considered as the building block of the syllabus. And they are mostly justified on several grounds, but most particularly, they are justified for pedagogic and psycholinguistic reasons. According to Long and Crooks, tasks are a more salient unit of planning for teachers than objectives. So when you are selecting some tasks for the students, it is possible to simultaneously, at the same time, think about the objectives you want to achieve, which are related to a general goal you have for a course. So in this sense, selection of task is very, very critical. Yes, now one of the, in fact, concerns of a lot of scholars with task-based syllabus is with the term task itself. You know why? Because a lot of people, task is a very complicated and is a very vague concept to define. They say that task is one of those concepts that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Recently, a definition of task was given. Take a look at this first definition. This is a more general definition of the task, which refers to a piece of work undertaken for oneself or for others, freely or for some reward. In other words, by task is meant the 101 things people do in everyday life, an activity or action which is carried out as the result of processing or understanding language. Like the task is the same, all the responses you get when you're doing something, understanding language, processing it. Someone says hello and you answer back, you say hello, how are you, I'm fine today. So you're communicating. They say that this single act of greeting is considered as a task because you're doing something either for yourself or for someone else, either for free without receiving anything or for certain rewards. So this is a general definition of the task. This might not fit well with task-based syllabus, which is something quite technical or something which is more academic in nature. As a result, a more academic or more technical definition was given by Richards, Platt, and Weber, as they define a task as something that, like drawing a map when you're listening to an instruction. The teacher asks you to draw a map. Listen to the instruction and draw a map. Or listen to a command and perform it. Go to the board. Come and sit here. Give me a piece of paper. Give me a pen. So these are all considered as a task. But there is a more recent definition of the task by David Noonan. Let me tell you what Noonan thinks of task. Task, he believes, is a piece of classroom work which involves learners in comprehending, manipulating, producing, or interacting in the target language when their attention is principally focused on meaning rather than form. So this is the definition that Noonan has provided for the word task. So based on the definition of the task, certain criteria were also counted to be regarded for choosing the right task in your classroom. I have listed them here. I just read through them. And if there are any parts that you want me to explain, I can explain them to you. The good task, he suggests, should promote attention to meaning. They should have a purpose. They should negotiate something. They should encourage attention to relevant data. They should draw objectives from the communicative needs of the learners. They should allow for flexible approaches to the task, offering different routes, media, modes of participation. They should allow for different solutions depending on the skills and strategies drawn by the learners. They should involve learners' contributions and their contributions, their attitudes and their effects. They should be challenging but not threatening. They should tasks which are very simple to do, are not challenging, may not be very effective. But when tasks become challenging, they should not be threatening so that they promote risk-taking in the students. They require input from all the learners in terms of knowledge, skills, and participation. They should define a problem to be worked through by learners, centered on the learners but guided by the teacher. They should involve language use in the solving of the task. They should allow for co-evaluation by the learner or the teacher of the task. And they should also provide opportunities for language practice. They should promote learner training for problem solving. They should promote sharing of information and expertise. They should provide monitoring and feedback of the learner and the task. They should heighten learners' consciousness of the process and encourage reflection. That is, sensitize learners to the learning processes in which they are participating. And finally, they should promote a critical awareness about the processes of language learning and ensure cost effectiveness and high return on investment. So these are some of the most important criteria for the selection of the task. So when you're selecting tasks for your classes, you need to pay attention to the most important aspects which are mentioned here, if not all of them. And so you know that we have two different types of tasks discussed in the book. One is called the real-world task, and the other one is a pedagogic task. Do you know the distinction? What exactly is the difference between a real-world task and a pedagogic task? Any ideas?
Yes, Doctor.
Yes, Mona, go ahead, please.
The real-world tasks, I think those tasks are happen outside the classroom. Give our students opportunities to participate the English language outside in the authentic situations. Meanwhile, pedagogic tasks, those tasks the learner are required to carry out in the classroom, inside the class.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Mona. In fact, that was the perfect definition. So real-world tasks as the name speaks for itself, refer to those types of tasks that we expect to see happen outside the classroom in real life situations, in real meaningful ways. But pedagogic tasks are those tasks that are expected to happen in the classroom situation for pedagogic purposes, for teaching and learning purposes. So, as you can see, uh, what we select to include in our courses cannot be real world tasks because we cannot bring the real world into a classroom situation. Uh, what happens outside in the real world is real in nature and is done for real purposes and real communication. So the moment we take it into a classroom situation, it is no longer real world task. It becomes a pedagogic task. So it means that we choose our pedagogic task from the real world task that the students might need to engage in later, in future, in near future. We choose them from real world tasks and try to turn them into pedagogic tasks that fit into the classroom situation. In order to select the pedagogic task or design some pedagogic tasks, there are certain things that need to be specified when you do this. Uh, the things which need to be specified are of two types. One is what sort of product you expect your students to produce, to formulate as a result of engagement in the task. And the second one is related to the operations that are required to generate, uh, what operations are required to generate this product, and what resources are available to the student, what constraints are there that students might encounter, and to generate this product. So first the product itself, what it is that you expect students to produce and formulate, and what resources are available to the students, what operations are required in order to generate this product. When you design pedagogic tasks, you need to take these two into consideration. And yeah, these are some more comprehensive set of elements which are proposed by Charlson and Stern, who suggest that in planning instructional tasks, teachers need to consider these things. First, you need to consider the subject matter that you want to teach, what materials are used, those things the learner will observe and manipulate, which ones are they, the activities that the teacher and learner will carry out, the goals for the task, the abilities, needs, and interests of the students, the social and cultural context of instruction, which is very, very important because this is what makes the task meaningful for the students. Okay. There are two tasks I want you to think about and answer. Write down your answers and send them to me for our next session. One of them is task 45. You should say, in your opinion, what would need to be added to the list for it to form the basis for a comprehensive curriculum model? What do you think can be added to the list that was provided in the previous page to make it more comprehensive? And the next task that I want you to answer is task 47, that what difficulties do you foresee, do you predict you might encounter in grading the tasks and activities in a task-based syllabus? We know that there are a lot of difficulties, a lot of disadvantages are counted for the task-based syllabus types. So what you think would be the problems that you as a teacher might foresee or predict when you want to select some tasks for your students and grade them in your courses? So please answer these two tasks for our next class time, and we will discuss them before we start the new chapter of the new book. Yes, this task which we are going to discuss right now wants us to suggest some of the factors that we might think might have a bearing, might have an influence on task difficulty. If you take a look at what I have included here, it says that for the task, for a task to be easy for the learners or difficult to do, a lot of factors can be influential. The first one is that, based on what most of the applied linguists agree and say, the degree of contextual support that you provide your learners when they are engaged in a task can make it easier or more difficult to do. So the more contextual support you provide them, the task becomes easier to perform. The less degree of contextual support definitely would be very problematic and very difficult for the learners to engage in. The second one is the cognitive difficulty of the task. You see, there should be a match between the cognitive difficulty of the task and the level of the cognition of the learners. Something which is beyond their current cognitive level makes the performance of the task quite difficult, as you can imagine. So the cognitive difficulty of the task should match the cognitive level of the learners. Then the other one is the amount of assistance that is provided to the learner. This assistance can come from a peer, a fellow student, or it can come from the teacher of the course. And so the more help, the more assistance provided to the learners, the better their performance of the task would be, and the easier the task would be for them. The other one is the complexity of the language which the learner is required to process and produce. What is the level of complexity you expect your learners to produce or process? If your students are at the intermediate level, choosing a kind of task in which a very complex language of advanced level is required to process and produce would be really nonsense. It would be very difficult for the students to engage in this task. The other way around is also true. That is, you give a kind of task in which to the advanced level students, the complexity of the language is not that high. It's very simple. So the students at the advanced level need to process this task and produce their own results. So this could be demotivating or boring for them because it's way too easy. What is expected of them, as is relevant to the complexity of the language to be processed and produced, is not appropriate. The next one is the psychological stress which is involved in carrying out the task. How much psychological stress is involved? The more the stress, the lower or the more difficult the task would be. The lower the stress, the easier and the more interesting the task would be. And last but not least is the type of background knowledge which is required. So if your students have haven't got any information about the task or the content, the subject matter that is being performed, definitely the task would be very difficult to perform than when your students have good knowledge of the topic that they are engaging with. So these factors are some of the most important factors that can contribute to task difficulty, and it needs to be considered by task designers. Okay, now we are done. We are over with task-based syllabus. So I'm gonna stop and ask you if there are any concerns, any questions, anything you need to be explained one more time, or any comments you want to add to task-based syllabus. Please, it's time for you to share them with me now before we start our discussion of the content-based syllabus. Okay, it seems that there are no questions. Let's now then move to content-based syllabus. What is content-based syllabus? Can you explain, please?
You are now
Okay, no
unmuted.
ideas about content-based syllabus? Yes, sure, please. It would be a great help. Mm-hmm. Yes, good. So the focus is on content rather than on language itself, right? Yes, absolutely right. So that's why it is called
You are now
content-based.
muted.
You see, in a content-based syllabus, uh, a subject matter, or as they call experiential content, like physics, chemistry, I don't know, literature, social sciences, theology, you name it, a topic or theme is selected as content. They call it experiential content. And this content is taught through the language. So, language in a content based syllabus serves only the purpose of a tool or a means that can help the students learn about this content. And for this particular reason, content-based syllabus is considered as a process-based syllabus because there is no focus on language at all. The focus is mostly on what content students are mastering in the course through the use of the language. To give you an example of a situation in which content-based is used, in immersion programs, when some people emigrate to an English-speaking country and they send their students to school, we see that students might not have that much knowledge of English to mingle with their classmates, with the society at large. But when they go to school, they don't teach these students a language. They don't teach them anything about the language, but they teach the subject matters they need to know about in English so that by attending the classes, the students can improve both their content knowledge and at the same time they will learn a lot about language in an indirect way. A content-based instruction has proven to be very successful in many, many areas of the world. And because again, just like task-based syllabuses, the students' attention is focused on a particular content. Grasp of content is very important to them. And in order to do that, they need to develop their linguistic abilities to perform well, to understand this content well. So, uh, there were some problems with content-based, simple content-based instruction, and because of the problems, the main problem was that the students developed their, sort of English that helped them in relation with the subject matter in school, but when it came to real world communication or survival English, they didn't know anything to survive at the society outside the schools. Therefore, they try to add some linguistic elements to the program, and they changed the title from content-based syllabus to content language integrated syllabus. So it means that part of the course, part of this syllabus, tries to develop students' uh, uh, survival English, or the English they need to use to communicate with other speakers outside the classroom for real purposes, for real communication, which is very different from the kind of English that you need to know in order to perform well on subject matter or experiential content in schools. So now yes, this is next time the subject matter is primary and the language learning occurs through the content learning. Exactly. As I said, language is only a means. Language is only a tool, an instrument that is used to teach this subject matter or this experiential content to the learners. So by learning the content, the students also subconsciously learn something about the uh, the language features as well. Yeah, so there are some uh, advantages of the content-based syllabus. It says that this syllabus is given a logic and coherence which might be missing from analytic syllabuses in general, which are little more than a random collection of tasks. In addition, the logic for the subject may provide the non-linguistic rationale for selecting and grading content, which makes it much easier from tasks to be selected and graded. And as an example of a content-based instruction is provided here in Australia, much of the teaching in adult ESL classes is content-oriented. Syllabuses take as their point of departure the skills and knowledge. Sorry, wait a minute. Yes, it's content oriented and syllabuses take as their point of departure the skills and knowledge which syllabus planners and teachers feel is important for the new materials or new arrivals, new students. And units of work therefore appears with labels such as health, education, social services, and while the relevance of this content might seem obvious, many learners are confused by content-oriented courses, thinking they have strayed into a settlement rather than a language program, because they are expected to learn the content rather than learn anything uh, about the language. In such cases, it is important for teachers to negotiate with the learners and demonstrate the relationship between language and content. In a recent publication, Mohan argues for content-based syllabuses on the grounds that they facilitate learning not merely through language, but with the language. Yes, so this is the one example of a content-based instruction in Australia. You know, Australia is a country where there are a lot of immigrants traveling to this country to stay there and make a future for themselves. And yes, their adult ESL classes is mostly content oriented. They don't have any language schools that students can go and learn English, to communicate in English. They teach it content, special content, especially if the topics are taken from the things that these adults need most in Australia, like health issues, education issues, social service issues. So when they learn about the content, at the same time, they learn about the language as well. HEDI allows learners to subject matter and language simultaneously. Language is learned through the use of context rather than the use of rules. Exactly. And one of the focus is on language as a process rather than as product. Absolutely right. Yes, language is seen as a means, as a tool that can be at the service of the content, and at the same time, it's not a product on its own. Just look at it as a process itself. Wonderful. Okay, now, yeah, we're done with content-based syllabus. Let's see if you have anything else to add to the discussion. I'm really, really out of energy, out of voice. My vocal cords are failing me. I've been talking since morning, class after class, and when I get here to the last class today, my voice, oh my God, is barely coming out. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really need that help. No, not at all. It's not your fault. It's the hectic schedule of the department. There are a lot of students, a lot of classes. So this is my responsibility. But Mondays are really hectic and really really hard for me and tough for me, especially this very last class. I am drained. My energy is drained. But when you cooperate and you help and I talk less and you contribute, it becomes much easier for me. So I really appreciate it. If you every time when you take notes and when we start something, just like Mona, Haidat, and Etisam and some others that are always helping me, Sonayev, by either typing or sharing their understanding with the class, it helps me rest my vocal cords for a moment, and I would be really grateful if most of you would be participants in this class. All right, so let's call it a night and finish today's class. Please don't forget to do tasks 45 and 47 and send them to me for in next week. And I will let you know which chapter of the new book we are going to start next week. Okay? Just send me a reminder, send me a note in our group to remind me to let you know about the pages or the chapters you need to read for next class from the new book. Yes, hey Dad, do you want to say something? Yes, I received it. Thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate it. Yeah, last night I saw it. I downloaded the zipped file, but I didn't have any time to take a look at it. And I forgot to send you a message to let you know that I have received it. Inshallah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. So how do you say goodbye in Arabic? Ma salama? Okay, ma salama. Goodbye. Great. You teach me some Arabic. Of course, our Arabic is not bad. We understand it because, there is a lot of commonalities between, we have a lot of Arabic words in Farsi, but it would be good to learn some expressions from you. In Persian, we say Khoda Hafiz. Yes. All right. Ma salama. Goodbye. Take care. Khoda Hafiz.
Thank you a lot, Doctor. See
Thank
you
you
next week,
too.
inshallah.
Shukran. Is it? Shukran. Yeah.
Yes.
Goodbye.
You are now muted.